in the top photo. You might also just note that there is a Class E unit on the ground floor of number 34, the white rendered building, which was used as a carpet shop and is now an office. And to the rear of those Victorian terraces is the subject of this planning application, which is this building here. And this is the building that's proposed for conversion for 2 dwellings. The buildings that front Old Station Road have been the subject of previous planning permissions, which resulted in a net increase of 6 flats, and we'll come on to that shortly. As I mentioned, the Victorian terraces that front Old Station Road were the subject of previous applications, and the approved plans are shown here. And you'll see the commercial and bin storage to the rear and cycling storage that are associated with the buildings that front Old Station Road. So this is the proposed block plan. You can see that there has been some reconfiguration to the rear to allow for the residential bin storage and the commercial bin storage and the proposed cycle storage to accommodate the entire site. Excuse me, sorry, my presentation isn't in sync on the 2 laptops, so there might just be a pause as I'm working my way through both screens. There we go. So this is the existing ground and first floor plans. They're not overly clear here, but obviously to the bottom of this picture is the 34 and 36 along Old Station Road, and to the rear is the subject of this planning application, and basically these are all labelled as storage. And these are the proposed ground floor plans, and you can see that we've got the pink and the blue, and they're duplex apartments that are proposed, and the pink one is has 3 bedrooms, and the blue one has 2 bedrooms. And you see that now on the first floor proposals here. Just to note, because it relates to neighbouring amenity, which we'll come on to, on the right-hand side here, there is a small car park area associated with other buildings, and on the left-hand side here is communal space as you walk towards the bin and cycle storage.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So this is the existing and proposed elevations on the Rouse Road side. You can actually, so this line here indicates a wall which will be retained. So a significant majority of this elevation will be concealed behind this wall. There are some relatively minor window and door modifications along this elevation. So this is the existing and proposed elevations on the south elevation. Again, minimal changes. These existing openings will be bricked up in materials to match the existing. And this is the existing and proposed elevations on the west elevation. Again, you can see some modifications to the windows being proposed. So we've seen this photo before, but these are the Victorian terraces along Old Station Road. We've got number 36 here, number 34 here, with the Class E unit on the ground floor. And then these are the photos taken from Rouse Road. So this is the subject building, and you've got sort of a close-up image on the left-hand side, and just step back here from the road itself, and you see the courtyard arrangement, and you can view that building, the storage building, in the distance. And this is the rear of the site where the window modifications are proposed, and I mentioned that there is a small car park just to this side as well. And this one's almost the same elevation, but you can just see the side here where those openings will be blocked up as part of the proposals. So now moving on to the consultations. The original proposal was for four dwellings, and the Town Council objected to the original proposal due to concerns regarding overdevelopment and lack of parking on site. The Town Council no longer object to the proposal, and shown in the response to the latest consultation, and that's for 2 flats. No formal ward member comments, but Councillor Hood did attend the delegation panel and shared concerns regarding the absence of on-site parking. No neighbour representations have been received, and consultees, including the environment team, private sector housing and environmental health, conservation officer, highways, ecology and waste management have all stated no objection, subject to conditions in relation to some of the responses. So now moving on to officer comments. The principle of additional dwellings in this location is considered to be acceptable. The application site is located in the housing settlement boundary of Newmarket, and the spatial strategy of West Suffolk's local plan permits residential conversion schemes within housing settlement boundaries if supported by other policies in the development plan. Looking at SP13, the settlement hierarchy, this identifies Newmarket as a town, and the towns in the district are at the top of the spatial settlement hierarchy and are considered one of the most sustainable locations to live in the district. So this proposal includes a net increase of 2 dwellings within the settlement boundary and within close proximity to shops, services, places of employment and public transport. And the principle of development is considered to be acceptable. With regards to impact on the character and appearance of the area, including the conservation area, the original proposal, as I mentioned, was for 4 flats, and concerns were raised by officers to the agent regarding overdevelopment of the site and residential amenity. Following this, the proposal was reduced to 2 flats, and these concerns are now considered to be addressed. The proposed external alterations are considered to be modest and have been amended to include timber windows on the Rouse Road facing elevation, which is considered appropriate for the conservation area and the building itself. So this proposal is considered to accord with the relevant local plan policies in relation to design and including the relevant Newmarket local plan policies as well. The Conservation Officer has raised no objection to the proposal. In relation to residential amenity, there were initial concerns raised with the 4 flats because the main living areas would be overlooked to the east and to the west. If you recall previous plans, we've got the communal area on one side and that small car park on the other. However, the reduction in 2 flat now means that there still may be the potential of loss of privacy on the ground floor, but occupants now have a private area on the 2nd floor, which is considered acceptable in relation to neighbouring amenity. In relation to ecology, this is also considered acceptable, subject to compliance with the ecological appraisal and submission of acceptable biodiversity enhancement scheme. Also required is a strategic access management and monitoring contribution to help ensure that the proposal will not have an adverse effect on the integrity of relevant European sites from increased recreational disturbance. And a note with regards to biodiversity net gain, this proposal is exempt and falls under the de minimis criteria. Also a note about affordable homes. Affordable homes contribution is not required in this case because the net increase of dwellings across the site is less than 10. In relation to highways matters, so this proposal is for the conversion of 2 flats, one with 2 beds and one with 3 beds. The cycle storage and bin storage have been provided to the rear, and bins will be presented on the highway, which is as per the existing arrangement. The Suffolk guidance for parking requires 2 cycle storage spaces per dwelling, and this has been provided, along with additional cycle spaces for the development as a whole and electric charging points for bikes. The SGB also states that 2 and 3 bed dwellings should provide 2 parking spaces. And in this case, no on-site parking has been provided. So noting the lack of on-site parking for the 2 flats, here is a reminder of relevant local and national policy. Paragraph 116 of the NPPF states that development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios. The relevant local plan policy is LP 44, which states in the town centres and other locations with good accessibility to facilities and services and or well served by public transport, a reduced level of car parking may be permitted in new development proposals where it is demonstrated there are appropriate sustainable transport measures and no cumulative harm to the highway network. In this case, the lack of parking is considered acceptable by officers because Newmarket provides good access to services and facilities. Therefore, the occupants are less likely to be reliant on the private car. This may mean that they either do not own a car or that they would have less cars per household than might otherwise be the case. So if the residents of the 2 flats do choose to own a car, the nearest long-term car parks to the application site are the Guineas, which is 0.3 miles away, so a 7-minute walk, or All Saints, which is 0.4 miles away, or a 9-minute walk. So these car parks do have long-term parking capacity, and an annual season ticket costs £250. Even if they choose not to use these car parks, it is not considered that the impact of a very modest increase in cars would result in adverse impacts on the highway network or highway safety. Noting also, and of importance, is that the existing lawful use of the building, which is a storage, retail storage, which would have been associated with the retail shop along Old Station Road, would also have associated highways impacts, including parking requirements. Also to note is that the Highway Authority has no objection, subject to securing the proposed bin and presentation points and cycle storage. So to conclude, the principle of the proposal is considered acceptable, and the highways, design, residential amenity, waste management and ecology impacts are all considered acceptable by officers. The proposal will make effective use of a vacant building and will provide sustainable accommodation in the town centre of Newmarket, and this is considered a significant benefit of the scheme. The officer recommendation is one of approval, subject to the conditions set out in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. And we have no public speakers for this item, so we're straight into the discussion and debate. And I've got Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. At Dell Panel, I was one of those who was responsible for asking this to come to Development Control Committee. I have to say I am now happy with this application. I'll put that at the front of what I'm saying, just to make everyone not worry. There were 2 reasons that I had that I wanted to look into this. One which we have already dealt with, which was affordable housing, and just making sure that we've had multiple different applications come forward for this site, and I did want to confirm that in aggregate we weren't getting net increase of more than 10, and that it wasn't being split just to avoid the affordable housing thing. That we have confirmed is not the case. And the other one is parking. Since the new local plan has come in with LP44, we've had 3 different applications come forwards, at least 3, I think, which are parking-free schemes. And whilst this scheme in isolate is absolutely fine in its location, I think there is a concern of a domino effect. And I do think that there is a piece of work that we need to do with regards to the MPPF's paragraph 116 to maybe look at the available parking and come up with an idea of how much parking there is. Maybe an SPD or something like that, but that's not relevant to this application. And with this application, I think that we are fine, and therefore I would like to propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Mulway-White, please.
Thank you. Could you just talk me through what they call the amenity space and the shared amenity space? Is there any greenery? Is it just a manky bit of tarmac? Or
That's very nice.
with bin storage? It calls it a patio area. I mean, is there any outside space for any of these people, residents?
I did think you were going to second it, Councillor, by the way, rather than ask a question, so my apologies. No, you'll second it anyway.
I'll second it as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes. I just looked at the photographs and wondered how long that bin line is going to be when we bring in better recycling, to be fair. Yeah. Straight to the answer. There's no one waiting to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. So on the site, it is quite constrained with a very small curtilage. So there is minimal amenity space, but there is a patch of green to the rear. So you saw that rectangular space. So that is a green sort of laid to lawn, I think it is, and a small patio area as well. But there is very constrained site and minimal shared community space.
People in flats with no access to, it's just not good for their health. They have no greenery, no green space, and I don't know how far they have to walk to a park there, but there isn't much that's close by as far as I know. So that's just my concern, is the health of our residents when they are so constrained and just looking out on a bin store. Not particularly good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mulway-White. I've got no other councillors wishing to speak. So I'm going to go straight to, it's been proposed for approval by Councillor London, and it has been seconded by Councillor Mulway-White with reservations, clearly. Could I see a show of hands in favour of that, please?
Thank you. That appears to be unanimous. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you, members. Just before we move on, we're going to try and sort out the synchronisation issue for the next presentation. Thank you. Okay, members, we've resolved the synchronisation issues and the choking issues with the chairman, so we can move on. Yes. I had to check the bottom of the glass and see whether it was marked. Okay, so we're now on to the next item, which is the Short Brackland in Bury St Edmunds. It's a prior approval required and to be granted. And Savannah, you can begin your presentation when you're ready, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. So this is an application for prior approval from the local planning authority under Part 3, Schedule 2, Class MA of the General Permitted Development Order. Class MA covers the change of use of commercial, business and service premises falling within use class E to dwelling houses, which is use class C3. So prior approval is a process an applicant has to go through demonstrating compliance with the criteria set out within the legislation under Class MA in order for the scheme to be considered permitted development. So in this case, the application seeks to change the use of 9 Short Brackland to create 2 dwellings. The application is presented to you today because it is submitted by West Suffolk Council. So this is the application site outlined in red. It sits on the edge of the town centre of Bury St Edmunds and comprises a 2-storey building with an associated yard area towards the rear. The site is contained within the housing settlement boundary for Bury St Edmunds as well as its conservation area, and the building is not listed. It is covered by an Article 4 direction, but this doesn't restrict permitted development rights in this case in relation to the conversion of it under Class MA. So this is the existing ground floor plan. So for context, the building was last used for marriage counselling services, which is considered to fall within use class E. Prior to that use, it was a residential dwelling. So this is the proposed block plan. It shows that there are no extensions proposed to the dwelling and clearly denotes an area for bin storage and presentation. Access to the rear is via Lawson's Yard, which is a private road. However, 9 Short Brackland has right of access over Lawson's Yard, which has been the case since 1992, and that's reflected within the title deeds. An area for cycle storage for each dwelling is also shown, as well as outdoor space accommodated within the existing yard area. So this is the proposed ground floor plan. So this is what's referred to as flat 1. It accommodates 1 bedroom with the open plan living room and a shower room as well. And then flat 2 would be accessed via the stairs and the front door of the property. So this is flat 2, located on the 1st floor. As I said, that will be accessed via the existing front door and the existing staircase. This flat accommodates 2 bedrooms with the open plan living and a bathroom as well. So these are the existing and proposed front elevations. You've got the existing on the left. There's not going to be any changes to the front elevation as shown on the elevations. The applicant has detailed that they'll be doing some repair works to the existing windows and doors. And then this is the existing and proposed rear elevation. So again, this elevation isn't visible from public realm, but it's a minor change, changing the window on the rear to a door to access sort of the private amenity space at the back. So these are some photographs of the site. So this is 9 Short Brackland. It's quite residential in appearance, and that front elevation will remain unchanged. This is the side of the building. So you can see the gate there is sort of the access to the existing yard area, all contained within the red line. And then this is just a bit of context. So this is looking up towards the town centre. So you can see that there are some existing residential dwellings, as well as you can also see the units that front onto St John Street. And then this is just looking the other way. So you can just see the application site here. And then this is another context view. So again, it is quite residential. You've got an estate agent's building here, but otherwise it leads down into Cannon Street, which is also primarily residential. So as mentioned at the start of the presentation, the application seeks prior approval to change the use of the building to create 2 residential properties under Class MA. So there's certain criteria that must be met in order to comply with the legislation and for the scheme to be considered permitted development. So for example, development is not considered permitted by Class A if the land forms part of a site of special scientific interest, forms part of a listed building or land within its curtilage, forms part of a scheduled ancient monument or a safety hazard area or military explosive storage area, which the site is none of those. The legislation sets out conditions of Class MA and sort of requires the local planning authority to determine whether these points have been met. So in relation to point A, which is transport impacts, the site is located adjacent to the town centre boundary of Bury St Edmunds, where you've got public transport links and facilities within walking distance. The site is about a 5-minute walk to Bury St Edmunds bus station and a 12-minute walk from the train station. You've also got the main town centre facilities, which are available to occupiers within a few minutes walking distance. The proposal is car-free, which again can be supported in areas that are considered to be highly sustainable with local shops, services and public transport. All within sort of reasonable walking distance. So again, sort of being on the edge of the town centre of Bury, you've got the Arc Shopping Centre within about 200 metres, and then the centre of Bury St Edmunds where you've got shops and services. You've also got St Andrew's long stay car park, which is near the bus station, which offers long stay and flexi stay. They're about 250 metres off the site, which could provide parking if needed. The submitted plans also show the secure cycle storage for both flats, which is easily accessible, and the Highways Authority have raised no objection subject to conditions in relation to bin storage and cycle storage, which are within the scope of condition for this application type. Point B requires consideration of any contamination risks as a result of the development, and no new garden or external areas are proposed, and there'll be no significant below ground works during construction, so there'll be no potential for any land contamination risks. And as a result, the council's contamination officer has considered the scheme satisfactory, so the local planning authority can be content that point B has been satisfied. Point C requires consideration of flood risk. The site is within flood zone 1, which is obviously the least vulnerable to flooding, so we can be content that that point has been met. Criteria D requires consideration of impacts of noise from commercial premises on intended occupiers of the development, and obviously as the site is within the town centre boundary and it does back onto units along St John Street, so prior to its use for marriage counselling purposes, that use was granted in 1987, but before that the building was used as a residential dwelling, so it's ultimately returning back to its original use. You've got the units sort of nearby on St John Street, but these mainly consist of retail units which are primarily open between the hours of 9 to 5:30 and are not considered to generate significant levels of noise. And also considering that the site is in a residential area also. Environmental health are satisfied with that assessment that's been provided by the applicant within their supporting statement. So that criteria is considered acceptable in our opinion. Criteria E is applicable when the site is within a conservation area. So obviously in this case it is within the conservation area. So it requires the local planning authority to consider the impact of the change of use on the character or sustainability of the conservation area. And as I mentioned before, whilst it's covered by an Article 4 direction, that doesn't restrict the permitted development rights in this case. The front elevation is the most visible from the conservation area, and that will remain the same, with the existing doors and windows to be repaired and retained. You've got minor changes proposed elsewhere on the building, but those are not considered to impact the character or sustainability of the conservation area, as views will be limited from those elevations, and also the Conservation Officer raises no objections. In terms of the provision of adequate natural light in all habitable rooms, flat 1 at ground floor exceeds the national space standards and accommodates windows in all rooms, allowing adequate natural light. And flat 2 on the first floor also meets the national space standards, and the living area is served by 3 windows, and the bedrooms again are also served by windows, so we can consider that element satisfactory. Point G is not applicable as there are no storage or distribution uses within the area. And then criteria H requires the local planning authority to assess the impact on local provision if an NHS service is lost. So whilst the building did accommodate counselling services, that wasn't related to the NHS, it was a private company. So we can be satisfied that there's no loss of an NHS service. And then in relation to fire safety, that's only assessed if the building is 18 metres or more in height, or contains 7 or more stories. So as you've seen, the building is 2-storey and is just over 8 metres in height. So a fire risk condition is not required. So this is just a summary of the points under Class MA that we have to consider. So as I said, the transport and highways impacts have been adequately assessed and considered acceptable by the Highways Authority with conditions recommended. The contamination risks have also been adequately assessed and considered acceptable. We've got a condition recommended in relation to if any unexpected contamination is found, then they notify us. The site is in flood zone 1, so least vulnerable to flooding. Noise impact has been satisfactorily assessed in terms of the units along St John Street primarily being open between 9 a.m. and 5:30 p.m, generating little noise. The building was once a dwelling and sits within a residential area, and we've got no objections from environmental health subject to conditions. In terms of the impact on the conservation area, no objections from the Conservation Officer given the minor changes. And in terms of adequate natural light, as I mentioned, all habitable rooms are served with windows, no objections from environmental health, and no loss of NHS service or heavy industrial uses within the area. So in conclusion, officers consider that the scheme satisfies the conditions as set out within Class MA, and subject to the conditions listed within the report, we conclude that prior approval under Class MA should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Savannah. Again, there are no public speakers, but there are now requests from members. Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can someone just explain to me why this is an application from West Suffolk Council? So I don't quite understand that. Are we going into housing? Because I thought Bolly Homes did that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball, please.
I was going to propose it, first of all, and I was going to ask that same question as Councillor Glossop, what the council's involvement is with it. Thank you.
Can I note that as a proposal, though?
Yes,
subject
please.
to the response. Yeah. Is that seconded by anybody, please? Councillor Sayer, and you're on my list to speak next, Councillor. So.
Okay, yes. Thank you. I was going to propose it as well, but I would just like to add this aspect of no parking spaces. I was invited recently to the opening of the car share scheme, which actually is just down the road from this site in Cannon Street, where there's community plug-in car schemes. So this is to stop people using their own cars, and it's just a general community scheme, and I just don't know how common this is. I had a quick word with my neighbour next door. He didn't know anything about it, but there are these community plug-in electric car schemes coming in so that people who, it's to discourage people having their own cars that live in the middle of town, so they've got access to a car when they want it. And I just wondered how, I think Suffolk County Council are doing it, and I just wondered how prevalent it was throughout the area, because we're going to get a lot of applications where there's car parking is sort of going to be considered not absolutely necessary in the centre of town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. There's no other members wishing to speak, so do you want to come back on these points?
So in terms of West Suffolk Council's sort of involvement with this project, obviously converting a commercial premises to residential, the property services team have been working with our housing team, and essentially the marriage counselling premises that was occupying from there didn't want to renew their lease. So working with the housing team, basically the proposal is to create temporary accommodation. So it's made on behalf of West Suffolk Council's property services team in order to sort of provide the temporary accommodation with the housing team. I didn't really mention that because it wasn't sort of material in the determination of the planning application, prior approval application, but just a bit of context for you.
And then just in respect of the car share schemes, I am aware of them. I wouldn't be able to answer now in terms of their prevalence, but I can certainly check that with our colleagues at the County Council and come back to you on that separately, Councillor Sayre. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sayre, could you just pop your mic, or was it over to Lewis to pop the mic off? Oh, you've done it. Okay, good man. Right, there's no other members wishing to speak. So there has been a proposal by Councillor Bull and seconded by Councillor Sayre to approve the officer's request. Could I see a show of hands in favour of that, please?
Okay, so that appears to be unanimous. The motion is carried and the application for prior approval is required and granted.
Thank you, Claire, and that brings the meeting to a conclusion. Lewis, can you confirm when we're offline, please?